Welcome everyone to Facts and Videos. 51 creepy random facts that will blow your mind. Are you ready to be shocked? Number 1. Vultures circling over a house is usually because of a gas leak. This is because they smell ethyl mercaptan, which is added to gas to give it a smell, and it's also the smell that also comes from rotten meat. Number 2. Female mummies in ancient Egypt were always found to be more decomposed than their male counterparts. They discovered that this was because male bodies were embalmed a lot sooner than female bodies. Female bodies were actually kept at the family home until they started to decompose in order to avoid necrophilia at the embalmers. Number 3. Antibiotic-resistant bacteria are actually evolving quicker than we can develop new antibiotics to fight them at the current rate. Number 4. It would take the same force as someone ripping 7 pieces of paper at one time to then rip someone's ear clean off. Number 5. You can actually become conscious during CPR resuscitation efforts, to the point of moving and sometimes even violently reacting, but still not survive cardiac arrest. It's called CPR-induced consciousness. It's very rare. However, there are cases where patients have been aware enough to push caregivers away or tell them to stop CPR. Number 6. 18% of all boating accidents are actually caused by people trying to urinate off the side of the boat. Number 7. There is a waterborne microscopic brain-eating amoeba that can enter your body through your nose. It is found in fresh water and can be present at water parks and pools. It is fatal within about 5 days of contact, and there's no way to really test for it before it's typically too late. Survival is highly unlikely. Number 8. There are serial killers who are really good at not getting caught for their crimes, choosing victims carefully, never overhunting, and disposing of evidence some may have up to dozens of bodies responsible for, but no trace will ever be found, not even bones. Number 9. Humans had invented surgery long before they invented anesthesia in the 1840s. Number 10. The daughter of John Adams, who was the second president of the USA, had cancer in one of her breasts. She had a full mastectomy while awake and sober, sitting upright in a chair without any anesthesia. A year later, she got cancer in her other breast and refused to do another mastectomy, leading to her death. Number 11. You could fall asleep tonight and wake up in the morning disabled because your immune system decided part of your spinal cord had looked like a foreign body. Number 12. Until the 1980s, surgery had been carried out on babies without anesthetic because it was believed they didn't feel pain. Number 13. Jeffrey Dahmer had given the people in his apartment building sandwiches that could have possibly been made from his victims' flesh. Number 14. Dentists usually would sand the needle tips to make them sharp again for each new patient. Number 15. Dorangel Vargas killed and had ate at least 10 people during his spree. He only ate men because he said their meat tasted much better than women's. He also stated that he wouldn't eat overweight people because he thought they contained too much cholesterol. Number 16. There is a 1 in 3 chance that the police in America will never identify your killer if you're murdered. Number 17. If you were to move back the start time for school in an area, would result in 70% less car accidents. Number 18. Egyptian mummies were actually eaten by Victorian British members. For the royal and social elite, eating mummies seemed a royally appropriate medicine. Number 19. Serial killer Mac Ray Edwards worked for Caltrans. He'd kill his victims, and then following would bury the bodies in places he would later help build the highways over. Unfortunately, not all his victims have been found, and many are very likely still under some of the California highways to this day. Number 20. In 1934, Albert Fish had wrote a letter to Grace Budd's mother and described how he'd murdered her before cutting her into pieces and eating her flesh. Number 21. Jack the Ripper was known to always cut the throats of his victims in a way which would stop the blood from getting on his clothes. Number 22. In the 70s, there was a serial killer called Rodney Alcala, who was known for raping and killing women. He went on a dating show and the woman ended up choosing him, but luckily she had canceled the date. Number 23. Once you have the first symptom of rabies, there is already a 9% chance it is too late to reverse. Number 24. Statistically, if you are a woman and are murdered, it was most likely by a family member, partner, or ex-partner in your very own home. If you are a man and are murdered, it was most likely performed by an acquaintance or stranger in a public place. Number 25. Dennis Rader had begun to communicate once again with police after many years of silence. He had gone decades without being caught, and once again started sending taunting letters and items to them. He asked them if he could be traced if he sent them his writings on a floppy disk, and they assured him through a communication in a newspaper that no, they couldn't trace him. He proceeded to send them a floppy disk, and they found metadata linking to his church. He was then arrested shortly thereafter. Number 26. Capgras syndrome is a mental delusion where you are convinced that the people closest to you have been replaced by imposters. Number 27. Edmund Kemper, also known as the co-ed killer, had committed a series of murders and rapes in California before finally killing his abusive mother. At this point, he then drove to Arizona, contacted the police, confessed to everything, and waited for them to pick him up at the payphone he had made the contact. He provided intimate details of the case before he could get representation, so there was no way he would get out of being found guilty for his crimes. Number 28. Less than 10% of all species on Earth even have the possibility of ever being fossilized, and even more will never be discovered because of this. So we only know about the existence of about 3% of all macroscopic life. Number 29. If you have a parasite within your body, there's only a small chance you'll know about it before it pops out of your skin or leaves through an orifice. Number 30. Many victims had survived the clutches of David Parker Ray, the toy box killer, but did not remember it. This was because he would kidnap victims, use them as sex slaves for several months, drug them, and clean them thoroughly before dropping them off unconscious at the side of the road, hundreds of miles away. Number 31. A common fact is that butterflies will drink blood if they have access to it. Number 32. Gary Ridgway managed to avoid the death penalty by revealing the locations where his victims were buried, forcing the police to take him back to those sites so he could relive the crimes. In the court footage, he sits there, expressionless, like a deer in headlights, while the families of his victims confront him with their pain and anger, telling him he'll burn in hell, along with other harsh words, understandably so. But then, the father of one of the victims, a devout Christian, approached the stand. He said, "Despite everything you've heard today, I believe in Jesus Christ's teachings, and he believes in forgiveness. Sir, I forgive you." His words moved Ridgway to tears. However, the judge quickly reminded Ridgway that he had no right to pretend to feel guilt, something he clearly lacked. Number 33. There's a compelling theory that Jack the Ripper could have been a midwife. A woman in that role would have been able to approach prostitutes without raising suspicion, and since authorities were focused on finding a male killer, no one would have suspected her. As a midwife, she would have had the basic anatomical knowledge necessary for the gruesome mutilations, and any blood on her clothing could easily be dismissed as the result of her work, perhaps from a failed pregnancy or miscarriage. This would have allowed her to move through the streets unnoticed, even in the aftermath of a murder. Number 34. Orca whales have been seen actively hunting moose in Canada. Number 35. Body integrity disorder is described as an extremely rare phenomenon where individuals desire the amputation of one or more healthy limbs or even wish to become paralyzed. Some of these individuals self-mutilate, while others request surgeons to amputate or sever their spinal cord. The condition is interpreted differently by psychologists and physicians, but there is currently no known effective psychotherapeutic or pharmaceutical treatment. Number 36. Almost every serial killer has had a traumatic head injury of some sort. Number 37. 6 nuclear weapons have been lost and never been recovered since the 1950s. Number 38. Every time you move your eyes from one spot to another spot, you go blind for the instant your eyes are moving. It's called saccadic masking. It's an evolutionary trait we have developed to stop us from getting motion sick. Number 39. You can actually condition someone with a clean history of mental illness into having a severe mental illnesses within about a week. Number 40. A brain aneurysm is unexpected and can happen to you at any time. 75% of people die within a day of having one. Number 41. It is possible to experience such a traumatic brain injury, physical trauma, stroke, illness, to the point where you are still capable of consciousness, but lose the ability to distinguish faces. The condition is known as prosopagnosia. Number 42. If you are unlucky enough, you could lose your ability to fall asleep. It's called fatal insomnia. It starts as regular insomnia that gets progressively worse and worse until sleep medication fails to do anything for you. Effectively, you will never sleep again. Number 43. Anesthesia awareness is a very real possibility. You can be aware and in pain during surgery but unable to move. Number 44. If a panda finds a fresh carcass, it is a fact that they will eat it. Number 45. We each have trace amounts of iron, nickel, gold, and silver within our bloodstream, meaning with enough people you could drain them of their blood, dilute it down to separate it, and eventually be able to make a full ingot of iron, gold, nickel, and silver. It would also take around 300 people to forge a longsword using these details. Number 46. Pancreatic cancer could be growing inside your body for decades before suddenly shows itself with painless jaundice. From that point, could have less than a year to live. Number 47. If it's sufficiently dark where you are, you will be able to hallucinate your reflection as a different entity, and it will appear to start moving on its own. Number 48. After suffering a minor injury, for example, a sports injury, sprained ankle, or small bone fracture, it is possible to develop acute compartment syndrome. When swelling occurs, intracompartmental pressure rises because the muscle does stretch. Blood can no longer reach the tissue, so no oxygen supply is provided. No oxygen means the death of tissue. Necrosis can occur in as little as 3 hours, which can then result in amputation of the limb or death. Number 49. Every 30 minutes or so, we produce a cancer cell, but the immune system would detect, kill, and prevent further spread. Number 50. Your muscles are a lot more stronger than you think. There is just a governor in place that prevents you from going full strength, because your muscles would simply break your bones in an instant from the sheer pressure and power. Number 51. There is a medical condition, Guillain-Barré syndrome. It's rare, but basically your immune system attacks your nerves, paralyzing your entire body, usually after a viral infection, such as the flu or COVID, although the exact cause is unknown.